The Seal Catcher's Adventure by Anonymous. There was once upon a time a man who lived upon the northern coasts, not far from Taig Gen Crot Callow, John O'Groat's house, and he gained his livelihood by catching and killing fish of all sizes and denominations. He had a particular liking for the killing of those wonderful beasts, half dog, half fish, called roan or seals, no doubt because he got a long price for their skins, which are not less curious than they are valuable. The truth is that the most of these animals are neither dogs nor cods, but downright fairies, as this narration will show. And indeed, it is easy for any man to convince himself of the fact by a simple examination of his tobacco spluchten, for the dead skins of those beings are never the same for 24 hours together. Sometimes the spluchten will erect its bristles almost perpendicularly, while at other times it reclines them even down. One time it resembles a bristly sow, at another time a sleekit cat. And what dead skin, except itself, could perform such cantrips? Now, it happened one day, as this p. 102 notable fisher had returned from the prosecution of his calling, that he was called upon by a man who seemed a great stranger, and who said he had been dispatched for him by a person who wished to contract for a quantity of seal skins, and that the fisher must accompany him, the stranger, immediately to see the person who wished to contract for the skins, as it was necessary that he should be served that evening. Happy in the prospect of making a good bargain, and never suspecting any duplicity, he instantly complied. They both mounted a steed belonging to the stranger, and took the road with such velocity that, although the direction of the wind was towards their backs, yet the fleetness of their movement made it appear as if it had been in their faces. On reaching a stupendous precipice which overhung the sea, his guide told him they had now reached their destination. "Where is the person you spoke of?" inquired the astonished seal killer. "You shall see that presently," replied the guide. With that they immediately alighted, and without allowing the seal killer much time to indulge the frightful suspicions that began to pervade his mind, the stranger seized him with irresistible force, and plunged headlong with him into the sea. After sinking down, nobody knows how far, they at length reached a door, which, being open, led them into a range of apartments filled with inhabitants, not 103 people, but seals, who could nevertheless speak and feel like human folk. And how much was the seal killer surprised to find that he himself had been unconsciously transformed into the like image. If it were not so, he would probably have died from the want of breath. The nature of the poor fisher's thoughts may be more easily conceived than described. Looking at the nature of the quarters into which he had landed, all hopes of escape from them appeared wholly chimerical, whilst the degree of comfort and length of life which the barren scene promised him were far from being flattering. The roan, who all seemed in very low spirits, appeared to feel for him, and endeavored to soothe the distress which he evinced by the amplest assurances of personal safety. Involved in sad meditation on his evil fate, he was quickly roused from his stupor by his guides producing a huge gully or joctailug, the object of which he supposed was to put an end to all his earthly cares. Forlorn as was his situation, however, he did not wish to be killed, and apprehending instant destruction, he fell down and earnestly implored for mercy. The poor generous animals did not mean him any harm, however much his former conduct deserved it, and he was accordingly desired to pacify himself and cease his cries. "Did you ever see that knife before?" said the stranger to the fisher. P. 104, the latter instantly recognized his own knife, which he had that day stuck into a seal, and with which it had escaped, and acknowledged it was formerly his own, for what would be the use of denying it? "Well," rejoined the guide, "the apparent seal which made away with it is my father, who has lain dangerously ill ever since, and no means can stay his fleeting breath without your aid. I have been obliged to resort to the artifice I have practiced to bring you hither, and I trust that my filial duty to my father will readily excuse me." Having said this, he led into another apartment the trembling seal killer, who expected every minute to be punished for his own ill-treatment of the father. There he found the identical seal with which he had had the encounter in the morning, suffering most grievously from a tremendous cut in its hind quarter. The seal killer was then desired, with his hand, to cicatrize the wound, upon doing which it immediately healed, and the seal arose from its bed in perfect health. Upon this, the scene changed from mourning to rejoicing. All was mirth and glee. Very different, however, were the feelings of the unfortunate seal-catcher, who expected no doubt to be metamorphosed into a seal for the remainder of his life. However, his late guide, accosting him, said, "Now, sir, you are at liberty to return to your P-105 wife and family, to whom I am about to conduct you, but it is on this express condition, to which you must bind yourself by a solemn oath, viz., that you will never maim or kill a seal in all your lifetime hereafter." To this condition, hard as it was, he joyfully acceded, and the oath being administered in all due form, he bade his new acquaintance most heartily and sincerely a long farewell. Taking hold of his guide, they issued from the place and swam up, till they regained the surface of the sea, and landing at the said stupendous pinnacle, they found their former steed ready for a second canter. The guide breathed upon the fisher, and they became like men. They mounted their horse, and fleet as had been their course towards the precipice, their return from it was doubly swift, and the honest seal-killer was laid down at his own door-cheek, where his guide made him such a present as would have almost reconciled him to another similar expedition, such as rendered his loss of profession, in so far as regarded the seals, a far less intolerable hardship than he had at first considered it.